Team Torpe, we have debaters Marlon Lee Lin, Alan or Peter. Represents the school.
That he conformed to nations, as well as measures taken for the maintenance of public order, end quote. The 1951 Convention and 1967 Protocol also implement protections for the host country. People who have committed a crime against peace, a war crime, a crime against humanity, or a serious non-political crime outside the country of their refuge, and are guilty of acts contrary to the purpose and principles of the United Nations, are not granted the protections that refugees are given. The convention protects both refugees and the host nation. In the same court case referenced earlier, Timsina versus Santos, the court, for the 8 of 4 refugees, the trial they were looking for, the court ruled that core elements of the 1951 Convention and Protocol were international customary law. The FSM must support this resolution because international customary law provides the government with legal motivation to decide on standardized treatment for potential refugees. International customary law is defined as a general and consistent legal practice of states, which must be observed by all countries that do not openly reject this legal practice. An example of this is the law of the sea, which states that if a vessel is in distress is seeing another vessel, that vessel will rush to their aid. Considering that the FSM is a member of the United Nations, and the United Nations as a community observes Article 14 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and Article 33 of the 1951 Convention and 1967 Protocol, both securing the right to non-refoulement, the FSM must acknowledge that the right to non-refoulement is considered international customary law. The court ruled in the case of Timsina versus Santos that, quote, like all nations, the Federated States of Micronesia is bound by international customary law. This obligation exists regardless of accession to any particular treaty, end quote. This means that the FSM cannot send people deemed to be refugees back to country of origin. Furthermore, also ruled that the benefit provided by mention under the international should be legally motivated to decide on what rights it will provide refugees who land on its shores. And as we stated in our first meeting, this resolution will provide the FSM with the most comprehensive codification of the rights of refugees at the international level, thus fulfilling the FSM's legal obligation to fill the void in its refugee policy. Now my partner Marlon Lele will discuss the third reason the FSM must support this resolution. Then he will address some of the concerns and correct some of the misunderstandings.
As my partner Paul has stated, the FSM should support this resolution because first, the FSM currently lacks the policies that allow for the humane treatment of refugees. And secondly, core elements of the 1951 Convention and 1967 Protocol are international customary law. The third reason why the FSM government should support the resolution is that it would allow the FSM government to expand its international reputation. According to Secretary Lauren Roberts of the FSM Department of Foreign Affairs, the FSM government seeks to expand its international reputation. A country's international reputation is important because it is how the rest of the world perceives it. For example, the United States is perceived as a land of opportunity. North Korea is perceived as, to put it lightly, an unpleasant place to live. Actions speak louder than words, and the world countries. And right now, the FSM's actions show that it is a country that houses refugees on a leaky boat for 2 years. By becoming a signatory to the Convention and Protocol, the FSM would be able to correct this misperception and also show the international community the core ideals of its culture: respect, generosity, and hospitality. Expanding the FSM's international reputation also holds economic value. The FSM is a nation that depends on foreign aid. Improving the FSM's international reputation will make it more attractive for receiving foreign aid. Thus, by law of syllogism, supporting this resolution makes the FSM more attractive for receiving foreign aid. Now I'd like to address some concerns that some may hold with the ratification of the 1951 Convention and 1967 Protocol and correct some misunderstandings about the nature of these two instruments. One common misunderstanding is that once the FSM ratifies the Convention and Protocol, it would be required to accept and host any refugees that find his or her way onto our shores. This is simply not true. The purpose of the Convention and Protocol is to secure fair, standardized treatment of refugees, not to require signatory countries to host refugees. And while the Convention does recognize the need for international burden sharing, the FSM government would not be required to host any refugees. The FSM would hold the authority to decide which and how many refugees to take in. Another concern that we would like to address is the belief that once the FSM ratifies the Convention and Protocol, we will see a sudden large influx of refugees on our shores. While countries such as Turkey, Lebanon, Pakistan, Uganda, who border refugee-producing areas, have a challenging time controlling the large influx of refugees seeking to cross their borders, the FSM, because of its unique geographical location, is highly unlikely to experience a sudden nor large influx of refugees should it become party to the Convention. Additionally, becoming party to the Convention and Protocol makes the FSM a member of an international network of 142 nations, all united by the spirit of burden sharing. If refugees did arrive on the FSM shores, we could lean on this vast network and find a more suitable and capable host country. The final concern with becoming party to the Convention and Protocol that we would like to address is the belief that the FSM would not be able to afford the costs of hosting refugees. This concern is rooted in the misguided notion that the Convention is set up to turn refugees into charitable basket cases for the rest of their lives. But as one of the world's leading experts on refugee law, James C. Hathaway, says, quote, "That's not how it works. When you actually read the Convention, you realize that it's all about empowering refugees to become active contributors to the places they go," end quote. For example, Article 17 focuses on getting refugees to start their own businesses, to become self-employed, to actually meet the needs of their own families. There is no mention of charity anywhere. It is all about letting refugees do for themselves. Numerous studies have shown when given the ability, refugees can have an enormous economic potential. For instance, a research team at the University of Oxford performed a study on refugees hosted in Uganda and found that refugees had a positive impact on the economy when given the chance to move around and find work. 99% of the refugees earned their own wages. 78% did not rely on any international aid, and 40% were employers who provided work for Ugandan nationals. Another study done in 2004 by Polena Cortez at Texas A&M University found that refugees who migrated to the U.S. from 1975 to 1980 earned 20% more, worked 4% more hours, and improved their English skills by 11% relative to economic immigrants. Another report done by Chimera Economics and Analytics found that refugees in the Cleveland, Ohio area contributed an estimated $48 million to the local economy and created 650 jobs in 2012. In a documentary by the UNHCR regarding the Syrian refugee crisis, a Syrian man was quoted saying, said, quote, "It's hard work, but I have to do it because it's harder for me to see my children hungry at dinner time or breakfast," end quote. The International Rescue Committee, an organization which helps resettle refugees, found that refugees are hard workers. In fact, the International Rescue Committee was founded by a hardworking refugee. He's the well-renowned physicist and mathematician Albert Einstein. Einstein fled Germany during World War II in fear of his life and settled in America. With his new life, he was able to help bring an end to the war. He also made major contributions to the scientific community, all because he was given a second chance to start over, a place where he was safe and protected. We must remember that refugees had a life in their homeland before they were forced to flee it. Refugees were contributing members to their society and will be contributing members to their new societies if given the chance. Albert Einstein was once quoted saying, quote, "A bundle of belongings isn't the only thing a refugee brings to his new country," end quote. It is clear that refugees can be positive contributors to the societies and economies of their host countries. There may be some initial cost of resettlement, but the UNHCR would help the FSM with the initial cost, as they did with the 4 Nepalese refugees. Ladies and gentlemen, we are witnessing the world's largest refugee crisis since World War II. 65.6 million people displaced due to conflict, 25.4 million refugees. It is of paramount importance that the FSM show international solidarity in securing the rights and humane treatment for these vulnerable people. And the 1951 Convention and 1967 Protocol is the best way. Supporting this resolution benefits both the FSM and refugees.
Thank you. We will now move on to the opponent's rebuttal, and you have minutes.
Good morning again. The affirmative stated in their speech that in Article 17, every refugee is given the right to start businesses in a territory where they are sponsored. If we look at the FSM, first we have to see if we have enough jobs and land for them to come and contribute to our economy. In the FSM, according to the Foreign Affairs Secretary, he stated that the only land we have is where the capital is built, in Bangladesh. That land is not enough for us unless the states or the locals are willing to sponsor these people. And in 2012, when Father Francis Hiso and Michael J. Levin, at the request of the national government, did a survey of how many FSM citizens are living in the United States, about 49,840 of our people, including those born to them, are in the United States. Why? Because we do not have the education, the jobs, and the opportunities that they can support their people with. And if we are thinking about the rights of these refugees, if we plan on bringing them in, we have to change our laws to better accommodate these people, make sure that they are given the jobs that they need, or if we become a signatory of the convention, we have to make sure that our job opportunities are enough. And according to an IMF report in 2015, refugees compared to immigrants are 17% more likely to rely on government benefits as their only source of income, and 15% less likely to be employed. The World Bank also showed that Malawi like a country in Africa that is just like us had to pay $25 million in 1990 to 1991 when they sponsored refugees, and this amount of money was the set amount of money that they themselves had to get out of their pocket because the donations done by other countries and the United Nations was already deducted. In 2016, Germany had to spend 21.7 billion euros, which is 32.3 billion US dollars to only to sponsor refugees, and this was all out of their pockets. If we think of the FSM having to spend this much money, I don't think this boosts our economy or help us in any way, but only puts the efforts of our country at risk. Last thing I would like to bring up is, as the Secretary of Foreign Affairs, Lauren Robert, also stated, over 90% of our money comes from the U.S. through COFA. And that 90% of money that's just 1 year. We cannot expect that getting donations from other organizations or other countries would help get us 90% back in each year. Thank you.
Thank you, Team CHUUK. We will now move on to the proponent's response to the rebuttal. So, Team Pohnpei, you have 3 minutes.
Our opponent stated that the FSM does not have enough land or does not have enough jobs to provide for the refugees. However, as we mentioned in our main argument, if the FSM were to sign the convention and protocol, it would not be required to host any refugees. And also, because of the FSM's unique geographical location, refugees arriving on our shores would be highly unlikely. In fact, the 4 Nepalese refugees that arrived on the shores of Yap were intending to go to Australia and got blown away by currents and winds and arrived on the shores of Yap.
Thank you. We will now move on to the main argument, starting with the opponent's main presentation, 15 minutes.
There were 2 main points that I mentioned in my introduction, and I would like to expand on each of them. My first point being that the FSM is incapable of supporting these refugees due to the lack of its land, resources, and national security. While speaking with the Attorney General of CHUUK State, Mr. Sapino Aso, he stated, and I quote, "If the FSM is going to ratify into this convention, we need to find the land to use. The only land that the national government has itself is the only smart of Balikat where the capital is built." End quote. We cannot really expect these refugees to come and boost our economy when we do not have the land available for them to build their stores, restaurants, to help our economy. We cannot argue against the fact that the FSM does not have any other land except the one in Balikat, because that is the only land that the national government has. With this small amount of land, we do not have the space needed to sponsor these refugees unless the locals and the states are willing to help. And we have to keep in mind that if we assign a specific place for these refugees to live in, we are violating the laws of the convention in Article 26, which is the freedom of movement, which states that refugees have the right to choose their place of residence and to move freely, even though we are only trying to make space for our own people too. For our resources, we know that the FSM does not have much to support these refugees or even our people. According to the Observatory of economic complexity, as of 2016, FSM exported 58.5 million and imported 170 million, resulting in a negative trade of 112 million. I bring this up because it shows that the FSM cannot and does not live off its own sea and land. It is not that our leaders are not trying, but it's because our resources are limited. Even job opportunities, healthcare services, and education is not satisfying or enough for our people. As I stated in my rebuttal, in a survey done by Father Francis Cecil and Michael J. Levin at the request of the national government in 2012, though I'm pretty aware that they are making a new report this year, they stated that 49,840 FSM citizens, including those born to them in their new homes, are residing in the U.S. The reason why they are all leaving is because they do not find what they need for their families. We should also keep in mind that as the FSM Secretary of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Lauren Robert, had stated, and I quote, over 90% of our economy comes from the United States through COVA. We do not have the money to support these refugees. We also cannot expect that becoming a signatory will bring back 90% of our economy each year by donations from organizations and the United Nations. As for our national security, though I stand on the negative side, I do believe that refugees are not bad people because they do not bring conflict because they leave conflict. But knowing the incidents that have happened throughout the years and the backgrounds of where these people come from, we can know that it is possible to happen again. One example is the attack on Paris on Friday the 13th of November 2015. The 3 suicide bombers entered Paris posing as war-weary Syrians with fake doctored passwords, identifying themselves as refugees. These people weren't refugees, but they snuck in with fake passwords as refugees. And these 3 men killed about 219 people and seriously injured 513 people. The president of France, Francois Hollande, stated, and I quote, refugees have paved way for terrorist cells to be seated all over the country, end quote. It is important that the FSM knows that though this rarely happens, it has happened and it can happen again. And even though we are protected under the United States through COVA, we cannot guarantee full safety of our people. Because the United States is our national security, but they have been trying to back out of the United Nations Human Rights Council, it would put our relationship with the United States at risk, meaning 90% of our funding and our national security. Under the Convention, Article 6 and Article 28 gives each refugee the right to practice every right of a citizen in a sponsoring territory and gives the right to a refugee to have travel documents and travel outside the territory. As we all know, when COVA came into place, FSM citizens are given the right to live and work freely in the United States. Don't you think this will jeopardize our relationship with the United States when they'll start to look at this as a way of having refugees enter their country freely? I mean, if we are expected to follow all the laws of the protocol and the convention, we have no right to take away these rights from these refugees. And according to a Pew Research Center analysis of UNHCR, in 2016, the United States resettled 97,000 refugees, but last year in 2017, they only resettled 33,000. It's not that the U.S. cannot, but they are giving less attention to this issue. And the United States is our funding and our national security. So if we allow the FSM to become a signatory, we put our funding, our national security, and our relationship with the U.S. at risk. Moving on to my second and last point being that the presence of refugees adds to the already prevailing economic, social, and environmental issues that our nation is facing. According to the UN Refugee Agency, refugees often compete with locals for scarce resources such as water, food, medical services, and housing. If the FSM is planning on becoming a signatory of this convention, they need to be able to provide these before stepping into it. We should also keep in mind that when the FSM ratifies into this convention, it is responsible to compensate for all the costs that arises when providing asylum for them. As I've already stated, a World Bank study showed that Malawi, which is a country just like ours, had to pay $25 million out of their pocket when sponsoring refugees for just 1 year. Also in 2016, Germany had to spend 21.7 billion euros, which is 32.3 billion US dollars on expenditures for refugees, and all of these costs that they had to make was already being deducted from the donations that came from United Nations and other organizations. If the FSM has to spend this much, then it does not in any way boost our economy. It only jeopardizes or puts the developing efforts of our country at risk. And as a report done by IMF has shown, refugees compared to immigrants are 17% more likely to rely on governments. To the point that appear very important to me: right and safety. As I said, the UN Convention are don't any asylums become potential refugees. If how dangerous their journeys into the islands can be. It's like military, we are to put their lives for the little hope they can find in our country. Another thing, I'm sorry. Just last week on July 6th, UNHCR report that showed that last month, 1 in every 7 people that tried the same died. For a while, the thing is that we will expect refugees from countries more investments to be made. According to a Pew Research analysis, 1 refugee resettled in the United States cost an estimated $64,370 for the first 5 years they are living there. If we are really concerned about these refugees, use that help others and bring them to places where they might be able. 2015, FSM had a report published called the 2015 Religious. It talked about the Muslims who moved from Majuro to Kushai. In the report, these Muslims they experienced resistance from the the leaders there, and they were even stopped from constructing their homes and churches in the community. If we want to help these refugees, the SM refugees, and we have first to ban these refugees if they should be a signatory of the UN's 1951 Convention and its 19 laws, because this shows how we are towards others. Thank you.
Thank you, Team CHUUK. Now to the rebuttal.
In our opponent's argument, they make claims that the FSM has no land to resettle refugees and does not have enough jobs to provide for these refugees, and that if we would sign the convention, it would force refugees to risk their lives by making the journey to the FSM. However, the convention does not require states to accept or host any refugees if they decided not to. In fact, we are not obligated to say yes to any refugees to arrive. What we would be obligated to do is allow these refugees to exercise the rights and freedoms that are provided for them in the convention. Also, the convention, if we were to become signatories to the convention, the UNHCR would provide both financial aid and also resources to the signatory countries to help support these refugees, as they did with the 4 Nepalese that arrived on our shores. These resources include food, water, relocation expenses such as airline tickets, briefings and educational programs on refugees and asylum seekers, and also legal fees. And on the statement of we have to spend money on compact funding. Compact funding is already going to end in 2023. And if we sign the convention and protocol, it would improve our international reputation and it will make us look more attractive for receiving foreign aid. Therefore, the FSM would be able to continue to strive as a government beyond 2023 when compact funding is going to end. Also, U.S. national security provided in the compact is in perpetuity, meaning regardless of whether funding ends, the U.S. will continue to be the security enforcement here in the FSM.
Our opponents also mentioned terror caused that they said was the result of terrorists using refugees to get into the country. In our main argument, we pointed out that the UNHCR uses a rigorous screening process to determine whether an asylum seeker legitimately falls under the definition of a refugee. It is harder than it's very much harder than an economic immigrant for a refugee to commit crimes, a certified refugee to commit crimes or terror. My opponent also stated that if we sign this, we will be opening the doors to refugees. Again, this is not the point of the 1951 Convention or 1967 Protocol. We are not required to take in any refugees. We are required to treat refugees as human beings. We're required to give them basic human rights. But should we not be able to fulfill certain rights, we can make reservations on certain parts of the 1951 Convention and 1967 Protocol to protect our economic systems and to protect our citizens. And also our geographical location makes it very hard for a large group of refugees to arrive here. Refugees are more likely to go to countries nearby them.
Thank you, Team Pohnpei. We will now hear the opponent's response to the rebuttal, and you have 3 minutes.
Regardless of whether we take in refugees or not, we cannot expect them to just leave their homes and expect them that they will reach wherever they're heading, because the Nepalese that came to Yap, they were not aiming to come to the FSM. They were unsure that they were ever going to make Australia, but they ended up in the FSM. So regardless of whether or not they come into we accept refugees, or if they come to the FSM, we still have to take care of them. And this is going to be a burden on our economy as it is not what it should be. So we cannot support them from a distance, whether or not they come into the FSM or they just go on. Being a signatory of the convention means that we have to support them, whether up close or maybe from a distance. But we cannot support them from a distance because we don't have the right resources, we don't have the right amount of resources in order to support them. And even if we do get help from foreign donors, these donations would make us more of a burden on these foreign donors because we are using their money to help the refugees and ourselves because we cannot help the refugees with our own resources. We need to be able and to be capable of actually being able to help these refugees before we are required by the convention to do so.
Thank you, both teams. We will now move on to the closing arguments or the summation, starting with the proponents' conclusion, and you have 4 minutes.
As a member of the United Nations, the FSM is subject to the 1948 Declaration of Human Rights, which gives any person the right to seek asylum in a foreign country. And as a sovereign nation, the FSM may control who comes and settles within its borders. Therefore, today, we are not debating whether the FSM government should or should not take in refugees. The resolution is about the treatment of refugees. We are debating whether the FSM government believes in securing fair, standardized treatment for refugees. As proponents to the resolution, my partner and I have given you 3 strong reasons why supporting the resolution is both a necessary and beneficial step for the FSM must take. First, the FSM must fill the legal void that has led to the inhumane treatment of the 4 Nepalese refugees. This nation cannot be complacent with treating refugees, people fleeing for their lives, as if they were akin to sex traffickers or criminals who are robbing our oceans of its precious resources. Keeping refugees on a leaky boat for 2 years is not acceptable in any modern immigration policy. And it is certainly not in line with our cultural values. Refugees are humans fleeing for their lives. They are not criminals. Supporting the resolution will fill this legal void and lead that led to the inhumane treatment of the refugees. Settlements of Convention 67 Protocol are ruled as international customary law by the FSM Supreme Court. If the FSM observes the principles of non-refoulement and accepts the Convention and Protocol's definition of what a refugee is under international customary law, then the FSM must standard treatment for asylum seekers and refugees. Supporting a resolution that provides the FSM with the most comprehensive standard of Supporting this resolution would provide the FSM with the most comprehensive standard of treatment for refugees. Third, the FSM Department of Foreign Affairs has expressed a clear desire to expand the FSM's international reputation. Expanding our international reputation holds diplomatic, cultural, and economic value. Supporting a resolution to ratify these 2 instruments and positively expand our international reputation would show that we are a nation that is deeply rooted in the traditions of respect, generosity, and hospitality. Supporting this resolution is both a necessary and beneficial step for the FSM. Unlike nations bordering areas of conflict, the FSM would be highly unlikely to see a large influx of refugees should it become signatory to the 1951 Convention because of its unique geographical location. If the FSM decided to participate in the act of burden sharing, there would be mechanisms placed in the Convention to prevent our social and economic systems from being overwhelmed. Moreover, the Convention was designed to empower refugees to become active contributors to the host country's society and economy, not to be charitable basket cases. Today marks the day our founding fathers began to fight for this nation's independence. It also marks the day the citizens of this country approved its constitution. On this momentous occasion, we celebrate our freedoms, our ability to stand up here and have a voice, to have a choice. My fellow countrymen, let us use that hard-fought independence to help secure the rights of those who have lost their own. Refugees don't have a choice. You do.
Thank you. We will now hear the summation by the opponents. 4 minutes.
If we allow the FSM to become a signatory of the United Nations 1951 Convention and its 1967 Protocol relating to the status of refugees, we ourselves are forming up a storm of cultural changes, economic and social problems, and land or political issues that will negatively affect the way our canoe will navigate while maintaining its stability and keeping its people safe. Ratifying into this convention comes with impacts that does not just negatively affect the FSM, but also the rights, life, and safety of these refugees. We know that the FSM is incapable of supporting these refugees due to the lack of its resources, and because we do not have the land needed and our national security does not guarantee full safety of our people, since the United States is backing out of the United Nations Human Rights Council, which is the biggest connection to the High Commissioner for Refugees. Accepting in these refugees would also add on to the weight that our canoes are already carrying. We should take into consideration that if we truly believe that helping these refugees is the best thing for our economy, then for the rights of these people, then we need to change the laws to better accommodate their rights. And because, as I've stated, it shows who we truly are towards people. Thank you.
Let's give both teams a big round of applause. Great arguments, great presentations by both teams. We will now allow the judges time to ask any questions if they do have any. Testing, testing. Questions are posed, you may take the podium to answer. Tom?
Yes, I have a question for the Pohnpei team. So, is one of your primary points is that the FSM should be basically a transit country for refugees, or actually accept them?
we were simply arguing for the rights of refugees. Whether or not we've taken any is up to the government. We can take in refugees, but we're not required to. Refugees will land on our shores, and if we don't want to take them in, we can transit them somewhere else. So a little bit of both.
Thank you. I have no other questions.
Comments from the judges? None? Okay, again, thank you, Team Ponpi. Thank you to Team CHUUK. Let's give them a big round of applause. You're excused. We'll give time for the judges to continue their total scores, tallying up the scores. I'll ask the MC to say something.
Thank you, moderator. As the Vice Chair of the Law Day Coordinating Committee for this year, I think it is very important that I acknowledge and thank businesses, individuals who respond to help in donating and supporting our Law Day for this year. As you know, the money that you donate is not coming to us or even the Supreme Court. It will go back to our debaters. If you want to donate, donation is still open. But for those that are acknowledged for your generous donation to help our debaters. 2018 donors, the FSM Supreme Court and the Coordinating Committee wants to thank the FSM Development Bank, CHUUK Delegation Office, CHUUK Enterprises, Western Central Pacific Fishers Tuna Commission, RAMP and MEDA Law Firm, Mrs. Nora E. Sikra, Bank of Guam Pohnpei Branch, Med Farm, Caroline Fishers Corporation, Chief Justice Dennis K. Yamase and family, Associate Justice Larry Wentworth, Casalelia Tyner, Gina Star Restaurant, RJ Electrical and Refrigeration Services, Kosha State Court, Yap State Court, Tafansak Municipal Government, Ms. Mofida Mama, Koshai Stevedoring Company, Koshai Utility Authority, Mr. Seth Foreman, Pacific Landscaping, Engineering and Construction Incorporated, Yap Cooperative Association, Mr. Francis Kilipong and family, Mrs. Emmy Mushashi Carl, Lorena Burnett and family, Mr. Jack Reitz, Mr. Chan Katanangil and family, Justice Ribit Samuel, Blue Lagoon Resort, Easterners, Chillfair Store, Pomika Sales CHUUK, Micro Enterprises, AWM Enterprises, Cisco, Pearly Store, ERC, Ifan Reality Construction, Iron Levi and family, Senator Aloka Chuab Sikra and family, our supporters, Office of the President, members of the 20th FSM Congress, FSM Telecom Corporation, SPDC, Small Business Development Center, radio stations, P6AI, YAP radio station, P6AK, CHUUK radio station, P6AH, Pohnpei radio station, and P6AJ, Radio Station, Office of the Governor, Yap State, RS Rope Commercial Arts, the Honorable Robson U. Romalu and family, Yap State Court, COM FSM Yap, and Yap State Public Safety. Thank you very much for your support and donation. As I say, donation is still open. We will have break for lunch and 2 more debates will follow that. Thank you very much.
So thank you again. Lunch will be an hour break, and then we will all gather here for the second phase. Thank you.